Hey, Wholeness, welcome. This is Josh of Inner Skilled and Integrating Presence. And today I have none other than Asoka here to do a swapcast. Asoka from Echoes and Story of Dharma. Asoka, how's it going today?
It's going really good today. And I realize we are in a completely different time zone. So good evening to you. Or it's good morning to me.
That's
Thank you
right.
for
It's
having
like a
me.
12
It's
up. Uh,
down.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're welcome. Well, thanks for having me too. If you decide to cross post this, I remember back in the days of the internet, you're never supposed to cross post anything, but now it's totally cool to do that, I think. So why we're here
I
today,
will certainly do
Asoka, well,
that.
I'm going to
Yeah.
throw it back to you. We've got a big event coming up, and Asoka, what do we got going on? What's going on?
So I think you're mentioning the Global Peace Prayer Festival it's going to be held in Bhutan from the 4th to the 19th of November. And it's a large event and it's a first time event. So this doesn't want to mean that Bhutan doesn't organize large scale events. It does, and religious events as well. I mean, such as empowerments and ceremonies, but usually they are not as public and organized in a way that to attract global audience. And this one is very special in that. So it's a landmark, first time ever event. Would you like me to elaborate a bit on it?
Well, you're going to have to,
The
I guess,
origin, the
maybe
background?
maybe some background for these the people that are Buddhists and maybe just Theravada or people that aren't even Buddhists. What is what is Bhutan? What even is Bhutan? Give the basic, just a nutshell version for people that don't know anything. You know, what is Vajrayana and what is Bhutan, or do we even need to know anything about that for this event? And the event itself, Global Peace Prayer Festival. I mean, it's kind of self-explanatory, but we'll get into the details of what this is and why it's so important. And I'll echo the importance of this, I feel, from what I've read about it and what you've told me about it.
Okay. So let's just start by saying Bhutan is a Himalayan kingdom. It's a very small, geographically, it's a very small country of only 750,000 population-wide. So it's quite small, with only maybe up to 15-20% of the population living in Thimphu. Thimphu not being the capital. Yes, I mean, sorry, Thimphu is the capital, but it's not where the airport is based. So people get sometimes a little misguided. So Paro is because of the mountainous. So we are talking about 2,500 meter elevation as a minimum in terms of the airport elevation. So that's Paro, and then Thimphu is about an hour from there inside in Western Bhutan. So it's also called the last Vajrayana, or the only Vajrayana kingdom in the world. Why is it called like that? First of all, it's I think we need to go back a bit to how come Bhutan is so much on the center stage at the moment on a number of topics. It's not just Vajrayana, it's environment, because they are carbon negative country. Because it's a kingdom. It's also a very traditional society where you would see people wearing their traditional clothing, men and women. So there are a number of aspects that make Bhutan a very, very peculiar, very special country. It's also known to be the country of happiness. So the happy country. What does this mean? So if you go back to YouTube and look and listen to all the prime ministers who have been leading the country, defining what happiness is, you will hear this subtly that it's not a country where only happy monk going around and people with smile on their faces and going. Happiness is defined as contentment, contentment with the lifestyle and contentment with requirement for livelihoods to be fulfilled, and also environmental protection. So, for instance, in Bhutan, the mountains are sacred. So you cannot. It's not like in Nepal where you can go and hike on the mountains. So everything is very protected. Now, to say that Bhutan is now out on the center stage, there have been a number of steps for that. Up until 1975, hardly anyone would have heard of Bhutan, not just because there were no internet, there was no internet or anything, but because it was basically self-secluded. And it's publicly acknowledged that they wanted to be like that. What happened around the year 2000, the fourth king of Bhutan, who is actually turning 70 years old on the 11th of November, has decided that there has come to an insight that there should be something alternative to the measuring of growth for a country. So usually in economic terms, we talk about GDP, so gross development,
Gross domestic product.
gross domestic product. Sorry, and
yes.
Gross domestic product. Yeah. And he said there should be something else. There should be something that also takes, that is more human friendly and then takes into account other aspects. That's not just, yes, economic growth, but economic growth with a human face, in other words, and an environmental face. So they came up and there was a lot of discussions, there was a lot of consultations, and they developed the gross national happiness. And he is a bit the face of that. So in 2008, it was adopted by the United Nations as an indicator for Bhutan. And as a matter of fact, it is also now considered and tried to be used as a business model for some large corporations. So there are a number of other avatars, I would say, of the gross national happiness indicators. So that's one aspect of Bhutan. And the other aspect is, in terms of Vajrayana, being a Vajrayana kingdom, it has to go back to the history of Bhutan. It shares a long border with Tibet, and it shares also a border with India, but on the southern side, but also on the western side. But let's talk about how Buddhism arrived in Bhutan about the same time, more or less. We are talking about the 8th century. More or less about the same time that Buddhism arrived in Tibet. So I'm not sure if your audience is familiar with the figure of Padmasambhava, who is here behind me. And Padmasambhava is also known as the second Buddha. So Padmasambhava, or the lotus-born master, because of the legend apparently as to how he was born. Padmasambhava was born in what is now Afghanistan, near Taxila, in a kingdom in a place that used to be called Udayana. And in the course of his life, he crossed. So you have to imagine that Himalayan region, starting from Afghanistan and basically finishing in Bhutan. So it's a whole range over several thousands of kilometers. So he traveled, eventually passed through India, what is now India, and then Nepal, and continued to Tibet. So when he arrived in Tibet, about the 8th century, he found that there were lots of scattered practices. So there was there were a number of, also including shamanic practices, and he offered that to the king at that time. He said, well, why don't we just try to put all this together? I'm summarizing it, right? Please bear with me. It's not a course on Vajrayana Buddhism, so it's just to put the whole pieces of the puzzle together. So he basically federated a bit all these practices, which is now known as Tibetan Buddhism or Vajrayana. And he continued to travel because he was on Tudong. He was a nomadic. He traveled and eventually arrived in Bhutan still around the 8th century, and found a similar situation. And he is considered one of the founding master of Bhutan. There are other founding masters, and you will see them in all the monasteries in Bhutan. So Vajrayana Buddhism is, you can say it in two ways. I would put it in a very simple way. On one way, you can say that this is the third wheel of the third turning of the wheel of Dharma. The first one being what is called Theravada now, but what is usually called ancient Buddhism, the original Buddhism. So the first turning of the wheel, we were talking about Sarnath earlier on, so that's it. The second turning of the wheel is, you would say, it's Mahayana, and the third turning of the wheel is Vajrayana. You can put it this way. And scholars would probably bash me because this is too much of a shortcut. But again, I'm not here to give a scholarly course on Vajrayana, just to give the full picture. And then the other way of seeing it as it is a branch in Mahayana, right? Still, it is a third turning of the wheel of Dharma, but it is like I don't like to say a sub-school, but it is a branch of practice in the Mahayana. And that's a very important one because that's where the concept of Bodhisattva comes in. And the concept of serving and the concept of, compassion. And compassion hand in hand with wisdom and power, right? So that's the way of putting it. And the concept of bodhicitta, meaning that you all have the Buddha nature. It's just that there are clouds not everyone can realize it, but it's possible to realize it. So this distinguishes itself a bit from the Theravada and what is called Theravada or ancient Buddhism, where there is a Buddha and the practice is a practice of asceticism and a practice of, between brackets, restrictions, and the practice of learning to work with our senses and desires and remove and remove and remove, and the path of arahantship, as you know. So it distinguishes itself in the sense that everyone has the Buddha nature that can be developed in this life, and the Bodhisattva is the person who, put it in simple word, is the person who becomes like a light keeper for other persons to help them realize their own Buddha nature. So that's where all the service and selflessness comes in, which you probably are more familiar maybe with the Thich Nhat Hanh tradition or the Plum Village. There's a lot of that sort of even in terms of communication, the talk and the service and understanding others through the filters of compassion, not necessarily. So there's less asceticism. Now, the other aspect of Vajrayana, and that also brings me back to describe, which also describe Bhutan very well, is highly symbolic. You can see behind me, there's a Tara Tanka, which is from Bhutan, actually. I don't know if it can go closer, but the Guru Rinpoche, has a lot of, I would say, tools. So, there's a mast and there's a Vajra. The Vajra is the symbol of power. There's also a Vajra right here. there are a number of tools, and it's also highly symbolic in terms of how the devotion is expressed, and the mantra is always, this comes from the tantra, so this is tantra school, high tantra school. And in that sense, coming back to Bhutan, Bhutan has a lot of that. It's a country with very, as I said earlier, with a very small population, hundreds of monasteries everywhere, luscious mountains, prayer flags, big masts with white prayer flags, I would say everywhere almost, and a lot of devotional work, devotional practices, devotional work as well. There's it's more even than in Southeast Asia Theravada practices. It's embedded in how people work, and it's also embedded in how they function. And that brings me to even the government structure of Bhutan. So the king himself has a name that relates to the dragon, because the land of Bhutan is called the land of the Thunder Dragon, and that goes to back to the legend of how Bhutan was, between brackets, discovered, I would say, or graced by Padmasambhava. So there are a number of artifacts. The fact that men and women in official position wear their traditional clothing, but with different types of accessories according to their status. And this includes also the shoes. It includes sometimes swords that they are wearing in parliament. So it becomes a very, you could say it becomes very theatrical, but it's also one aspect that is very important and that I've noticed over the years, coming closer and closer to Bhutan, that also brought me eventually to be part of there and to work for this festival, is that it Vajrayana, the religion itself, or the practice of Vajrayana itself, is embedded in the governance with the principle of Riksum Gompa. And the Riksum Gompa is courage, wisdom, courage, compassion, and wisdom, and power. So these are the three pillars of Vajrayana Buddhism. Chenresik, compassion, Manjushri, the wisdom, and Vajrapani, the courage. So Vajrapani is a figure that has a tendency to be wrathful. So in Tantra, there are like peaceful, like this, like peaceful figures, and then there are wrathful figures who have open mouth, and they tend to have like very wrathful figures. And Vajrapani is one of them, and is it's to repel, and it's also a way to work through and transcend greed, hatred, and delusion. So the three poisons. So that's why there are three skulls.
They're kind of like
right? So
Dharma
we
protectors too,
we're
right?
kind of circling around Dharma protectors, exactly. So we're basically circling all the, this is something quite interesting, and I know that you are definitely, as well as I have had strong footing into the Thai forest tradition. So this distinguishes itself completely in terms of the external. So what is seen, what is perceived, what is reflected to you when you go to Bhutan, or when you enter a Vajrayana monastery. But digging deeper, one can find out that actually we're just circling around the same concept. So it's greed, hatred, and delusion. Okay, three poisons in Vajrayana. There are two more. There is ignorance and there is jealousy. But if you just put them together, we coming back to the same hot pot of how do we actually connect to our own nature, and how we remove the filters to actually work and clarify this nature. considering that our nature is pure, but there are obscurations that prevent us to see the purity of our nature. So how you enter that Dharma ocean, how you enter it is you're still entering it. So you're going to bounce or bump into any of the same similar concept. And interestingly, when I say that the Vajrayana is embedded in the governance structure in Bhutan, it actually also seems to be very much practiced that way. It's in the constitution. It's not just lip service. There really is a strongly willingness from the leadership to maintain this as such. So when we come to Bhutan and government and leadership, we're talking often, you will see the word enlightened leadership going together. And that's because the enlightened comes from, again, the Buddhist perspective on how do you work through your own demons, in other words. And that brings us to Bhutan today. So now, how does this relate to the Global Peace Prayer Festival? So the fourth king, whom I mentioned earlier, is the father of the fifth king, the current king, who is a young king. I think he is only 45. And he is the face of modern Bhutan in the second phase of the modern Bhutan. So his own father, the third king, was the face of modern Bhutan. He passed away very young. So he left his son, the fourth king, to reign very young as well. And he grew up with this sense that maybe it would be time to open Bhutan to the rest of the world. Mentioning that the border with China, I should say the border with Tibet, but yeah, it's the border with Tibet, is closed. So Bhutan has has a long border also with India. It's a border that does a bit of a running around because there is a part of Assam that is in between it. So India and Bhutan and Nepal are not connected. There's a piece of India in between. So there's a sort of a little, almost like a little enclave there. And so he thought it would be good to start opening the country. That started about 1975, 76. And he is the one who is known to have developed and suggested and got the insights about the gross national happiness, which is now known and is now adopted also by the United Nations. And between just little note here is that when I used to work for the UN earlier on in my previous incarnation, I had heard about the GNH already when I worked in a completely different area of the world, complete opposite side in Latin America and the Caribbean. We heard about the GNH and we were like, oh, wow, it's the first time we see a UN report with monks, with Tibetan monks Tibetan Vajrayana monks on the cover. So this king is turning 70 on the 11th of November. So the original idea was to have a celebration of his birthday that would honor his contribution to the country, etc., etc. So this was the seed idea. And it's a seed idea that came from his son, the fifth king, and was transmitted to the prime minister for discussing the logistics, how it would happen. And I got involved in it because I met with the prime minister on a very auspicious occasion and was offered to contribute to the project. And so the project is organized. The event has taken a lot of shifting in terms of the content, in terms of the duration. So now it is set to be for 2 weeks, and it has completely expanded But if you look at the dates, it still is the 11th of November is right in the middle. So there is a week before the 4th of November, and then a week after the 19th of November is closing the festival. I said it also goes into four stages. The initial idea was to focus on the Kalachakra. And now Kalachakra is the highest tantra. It's the highest tantra in tantric Buddhism. The Kalachakra is a mandala which is most often represented in 3 dimensions and corresponds to the outer mandala, the inner mandala, and your secret mandala. So it's basically the 3 gates of body, speech, and mind, out and in. So basically it describes interdependence between your reality, if I would say, and the reality outside, knowing that there is no disconnection between the two. So we're talking about non-duality here. All right. So the idea was to have that. This had never happened before in Bhutan in public. And as you might know, or as your audience might know, usually Kalachakra empowerments are bestowed by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So His Holiness stopped giving teachings, as a matter of fact, but stopped the Kalachakra empowerment at the 34th Kalachakra empowerment, and that was 2014. He stopped that. It's a lot of work. It's basically 10 days, 14 days teachings, because it's basically retraces the whole history, not just the whole history, sorry, the whole concept of Buddhism, and brings you to the realization of the pure nature of your mind. But because the Dalai Lama didn't want to have just empowerments like this, he wanted people to understand, why is this so important? What are the tenets in Buddhism that makes it such an, as he would say, an important science? So you need to explain that. So it takes about 2 weeks. So the idea was to have a Kalachakra empowerment bestowed by the head of the Sangha in Bhutan. He's called the J. Kempo. That's the patriarch of the Sangha. Eventually, it's not going to happen this way. So originally was on one idea for a week, and then now we have Kalachakra at the center of the event during 3 days, and before and after that, other events, all very important events. So initially, it starts with what's called a Jhabi. And again, it goes back to the form that Vajrayana takes, the form that it takes in terms of the practice. There's a lot of mantra chanting. There's a lot of practice and prostrations and dances and things like this. So it's highly visually very entertaining as well. And mentally, the mantra is also known to be not just a tool for to prevent the destruction of the minds. It's also a way to express energy to the outer world. If you believe into understanding how the power of the spoken word or something like this, you speak your mind out. The mantra carries energy, and the mantra has a protective as well as a auspicious and aspiration power. So the first few days, 4, 5, 6, and 7, if I'm correct, there is this Jhabi, and Jhabi is an enormous puja. It's a Dharma protection cleansing puja, right? Then there is Kalachakra. Then there is a global prayer, which is centers around the global prayer means chanting protection chants, and that's basically entirely dedicated for the king. So there is the Guru mantra, Guru Rinpoche's mantra, and then there is a Kalachakra empowerment for 3 days, and then Nuns ordination. So for the women out there, Vajrayana has Mahayana and Vajrayana have different, have a more flexible access for women to practice and for women's ordination. And although there still are bottlenecks when it comes to higher Lama and higher teachings, there are now changes in the way these teachings can be offered for women as well, by women as well. And that means that women can access now it is being allowed, between brackets, I would say there's a statement made by His Holiness the Dalai Lama that the Geshe Ma, so Geshe means high Lama, but also the teaching Lama. So he can be teaching, he can teach, he has studied basically beyond the PhD. And the Geshe is a high Lama professor, it's the equivalent of professor. And now we can have also women, so Geshe Ma. And Bhutan has taken on the beacon of that and has already had, I think, a previous one several years ago, and now there is a second one. And this is going to be happening between the 14th and the 19th of November at a large nunnery near Thimphu. So from one event, which was basically starting with the seed, which was Kalachakra, it became a full spectrum of what Vajrayana offers in terms of devotion and practices. Now, this was in a nutshell. If there are any scholars out there, they might say that I forgot and forgone a lot of details, but this was not the purpose of giving a lecture on Vajrayana. It was just to give an idea of how it fits really well into Bhutan current context. Now, how does it fit into the outer context? Why now?
Well,
go ahead.
Yeah, I
wanted to ask
before. I just before we do, wow, you covered so much there, and thank you, because I know very little about, I mean, Mahayana, Vajrayana, and Bhutan. I mean, I watched a documentary and a little bit, with like this tourist documentary, you have these little tidbits like, sorry, I'm just going to cheapen everything Asoka said by putting in something a little entertaining here. Sorry, I just throw it in here. It's maybe
it's okay.
comic relief. I don't know, but like a phallic symbol, and taken out of context, it seems ridiculous, right? Because I'm taking things out of context here, and then you've got like. Monogamy, right? Like they're allowed to have multiple wives. And you have to pay to foreigners have to pay like a hefty fee to get in. So these are all kind of like, I would say, irrelevant tidbits, but that maybe the general public would focus on, that are just completely out of context. So that aside, I just want to say thank you for that overview and kind of schooling, because I mean, you get dumb Americans like me that have no context, or like, we don't know hardly anything about the world, it's pretty, yeah. I can't speak for all Americans, but and each one of those things you said, like you said, it can go in depth. I mean, this is a huge, like, multi-century, and multicultural, just the different schools in Vajrayana too, right? And that just all the different lineages, all the different practices, it goes really in depth and complex, and I know very little about it. So try to distill it all down, if anybody's like complaining that took too long to give some context, I mean, you're just barely even scratching the surface on any of it. So,
exactly.
But it was sufficient. It's very, 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 I mean, yeah, it's just, I get, anytime I try to want to study like Vajrayana or Tibetan Buddhism, I just get overwhelmed, because I just hear so much and I don't have context, and I don't have where it all fits in. And I don't do any of those really practices, other than some of the core things that, all these things, all the different schools and traditions of Buddhism have in common. So I think you did a really good job there. I appreciate that. So let's jump into here the event itself and why it's so important now. And I will just say the peace prayers, with all the different warmongering rhetoric that's out there today. I mean, it's nothing new though, as well. I mean, we have people that are wanting to beat war drums to, to control other people, to gain power, all these things. And it's even more important too when we look at the historical Buddha in Theravada, and he intervened. It said he intervened in a couple wars, and then while he was intervening, they stopped. But as soon as he backed out, so if a Sammasambuddha is said in Theravada cannot even stop wars, we've got a lot of work to do. And I would just say with this law of polarity, it allows for events like this too. We can, if there's warmongers and people that are beating the war drums, well, then there's the polarity allowance for us to do peaceful things and to have peace prayers, to do everything for peace, to promote peace, to pour energy into it, to at the very least balance some of this out, if not maybe tip the scales, So that's how I see it. To jump in real quick about peace and why we need festivals like this for it.
Would you mind me to touch base just 1 second also on the SDF, on the hefty fee, and would you like me to, because there's an inside story
Pick up.
to that.
Yes, pick up all of that stuff, however you want to say it. Sorry for the little bit silliness here too. And then
No, it's not
pick up
silly. It's being part of the festival. I mean, I've also always wanted to go to Bhutan, and earlier on said, no, I don't think I will ever go. It used to be a lot closer. It used to be, they acknowledge it. It's self seclusion. It's called self-seclusion, and it's not something I'm revealing here. It's been common knowledge. They wanted it this way. But the previous king and the current king at the moment said, okay, we can change that. We can, but in our own terms. So the high value, low volume is the driver for keeping this sustainable development fee, which is called the SDF. It used to be higher before COVID. It used to be $250 a day. And you would get a visa for 7 days. So your trip would be minimum $1,500. But with that $250, you would get all the services. You would get everything. It's not like you pay. Someone told me this misunderstanding is that you pay that on top of everything. No, it includes the service of the travel agencies, the meals, the accommodation, the entries to all the monasteries and wherever you want to go, museum, whatever there's no hiking happening unless you go to Tiger's Nest. So it used to be higher, and during COVID hit every country very hard, but the smallest and the secluded country a little harder, especially those who have a lot of remittances on external visitors. So after COVID, Bhutan decided to, in discussing with the business community, we are going to drop it, but we still need to keep a certain amount coming in every year. So we need to increase the numbers, but keeping the value. All right. So the SDF has been dropped to $100 a day. In that $100 a day, you get the same. So it's a minimum. So I've known people who've gone to Bhutan and pay a lot more because they prefer to go to a $500 hotel every day, which is available. But if you want to be on the simpler side, you can just simply go for $100 a day plus your ticket, plus a little tip here and there, and you have a nice week in Bhutan. So high quality, high value, low volume is their choice, and I doubt it might change. Also, the
I,
other comment I heard is people
I
saying, "Oh, I
appreciate the
don't want to go
clearing
to
that
a
up.
country."
Yeah. I would just
I
say I
listen, someone
appreciate
other
because I had misunderstandings of that too. So I just want to say thank you for clearing
many
that up
people
because
do.
yes, yes.
Many people do. Yeah. Yeah, it's not new. So it's only when I organize a trip myself. I organized a trip, a retreat there in 2020. Oh, it was planned for 2020, but it never happened in 2020. It happened in 23, 24. So I also had misunderstood that, so I didn't know it was going to. So that's one, but there's a corollary to that, and the corollary comment is often heard is, "Oh, I don't like to go to a country where I need to be always accompanied by someone. I like to go and roam by myself." So the thing is, in Bhutan, you cannot, as a foreigner or as a non-resident, which is very easy to recognize because you probably would not be on your own, or you would probably not be dressed like everyone else. You cannot enter monasteries, and you cannot take photographs inside monasteries and important places. You cannot enter by yourself. You have to pay a fee, and you would not know what's happening. You would enter the monastery and you would not know. So you are accompanied by someone who at least will give you basic understanding of what the Punaka monastery, for instance, is beautiful, is where the Sangha resides during the winter, because it's a lowered altitude, so it's less cold. So it's cool. It's warmer, I would say. So it's only 1,500 meters altitude. So the Sangha, the whole monastic Sangha, or the central monastic body, moves to Punaka. It's a beautiful monastery. It's a beautiful complex on a river. So you enter there, you have to pay, and then you would know what? You would just go roam around, and you can't take pictures inside. So it's much easier to organize it this way. It also maintains some sort of integrity of the place, and that's the corollary. So, but you can roam. You can tell the guide, "Okay, I want to go and visit some shops." So you can say that. It's not like you have someone next to you all the time. So there are a number of misconceptions. So I actually thank you for mentioning that. So it gives me an opportunity to break that down. Now, why the Kalachakra now, or why this event now? If you go back to the original idea of having an event centered around the Kalachakra, Kalachakra does it mean? It means awakening the wheel of time. And I am not sure if your audience or if yourself has heard of Kali Yuga, so the power of destruction. We don't need special glasses to actually realize the kind of times we are living in. But as you mentioned as well, wars or conflicts or skirmishes have always existed during, and they are part of the samsara. At the moment, we actually do have a lot of them, and they are quite substantive. Maybe we are in a transition time. The Kalachakra is the highest teaching in Tantric Buddhism. So it comes as the opposite. It makes you revise your mind, your inner world, to try to project outside a better outer world. So to work on this non-duality in peaceful terms. The power of prayers are meant to be the power of the mantras, as I mentioned before, invoking the power and the energies of the figures that are representative. So there's Guru Rinpoche as one of the founder of Tibetan Buddhism, so to speak, and one of the master founder of Bhutan. But there are a lot of other mantras and tantras that are important. So why now? I think it's just a matter of honoring again the contribution of the fourth king to the modern face of Bhutan, even if he's not really the face of modern Bhutan, but he's the second face, or to honor his contribution, to honor his the way he also has decided to step down. So think about this. Think about this. Sink this in this current context. He has decided to step down and to let the country be led in democracy, having a fully fledged government with a prime minister who is going to be the leading of the country. Where in the world has this happened before? I'm not sure. I can't think of any, as a matter, besides Bhutan. He stepped down.
Well,
He stepped down
I would just
much
say, yeah.
earlier than.
So there is still a king or not? So you're saying that he just undid the whole monarchy? There's still a king, so he didn't undo a monarchy. He just resigned. Which, by the way, I will just remind you that in Denmark, I'm pretty sure the queen stepped down. She retired early and handed it over to her son, but I mean, it still continues the monarchy. But you're saying he kind of did the same thing, and I think this may be a trend. Who knows? Because people are seeing this. It seems outdated in today's society to have monarchy. I mean, most people already know it's just a symbolic position. They don't hold the kind of authoritarian power that they once did. And not to get too political here, but you have something like in the United States where, I mean, these executive orders are kind of like dictatorial decrees. And if that gets normalized, then that's like a dictatorship. And that's not even a, so anyway, but put that aside and explain that just a little bit more. And then I think we ought to start transitioning to, if people are interested in actually going and attending, maybe what do they need to know if they're going to be serious about this? And everybody else that wants to play a part, you want to talk about, it's going to be an online offering as well. So we can get into all this.
Right. Yes. So the first question. He stepped down in terms of absolute monarch. The father passed on the reign to the flame, I would say, to his son, who's the current king, the fifth king. But it's not an absolute monarch. So it's a bit like Western monarchies. You have that in Belgium. There's that in Denmark, you mentioned, and maybe in Norway as well. Correct?
I think so. Yeah. So he established a parliament too. Established a parliament, right?
Yes, there's a parliament.
Yes. Okay.
So
okay.
And it
parliamentary
took
monarchy.
Yes, if people are interested, there's a book written by the actual current Prime Minister, His Excellency Charing Topic. It's a book entitled Enlightened Leadership. So it explains all of that. It's a very fascinating book because it's very personal. He also tells his personal story as a child born in India and who grew up in a boarding school in India, and then with a family of civil servants, and then etc., how he become now twice prime minister. But he explains that very well, that transition from absolute monarchy to basically a Western democracy, but with a monarch and a high respect, where actually when they had a referendum there was a referendum in 2000. Now I am a little lost with the actual dates, but there was a referendum at some point to say, okay, I'm going to step down. We're going to establish democracy. Would you believe that nobody wanted that? Nobody wanted him to step down. He had to convince and go around, sometimes walking, because there are lots of places in Bhutan that are still very remote yet. You can't access them by proper roads. So walking is also something that is part of the rural life in Bhutan. He went around and explained to me, sat down with people in the villages. You have a monarch here, highly respected monarch, who goes and sit down in the villages and say, I'm going to step down and I would like to explain to you why I'm doing this. And people accepted it. And then his son, so the current king, also married a commoner. Now didn't marry someone of also royal extraction. And he does the same. He has the same type of I would say template. He goes around, talks to people. They are now building a new city. He goes there and carries logs and bricks and things, and puts his hand into the mud. So that is the sort of role modeling that is happening in Bhutan. Why they did it, it's, I think, quite simple to say that it was a necessity for the country to start opening up and to start building trade relations with India and to set itself a bit up. Then there was another aspect as well, that the country has about 2,000 glaciers, and they are very much affected by what is called climate change, or anyway by global warming, whichever way you want to put it. The glaciers are melting, and as well as they have they produce so they are carbon negative, which means that they're very highly efficient in the way they function. So they're being carbon negative is better even than being carbon neutral. Some people say that's normal because they don't have any factories. So they also have very cheap way of producing electricity because of these glaciers. They have had hydropower. So basically, you're taking these channels, so the agriculture, organic agriculture, prevention from deforestation. So 70% of all the land mass has to remain forest cover. That's in the constitution. And agriculture, that, the hydropower, and building equal, building peaceful relation with the neighbors and places like this. So he has decided that was the way to go, and he said, okay, in that I also need to go, and we'll be establishing a parliament. And the constitution was drafted over several years and take input of a lot of stakeholders. And there's one aspect which I think is quite unique, is that you can't be working in the government, or you can't be in a position of power or decision making, including the monarch, above beyond 65 years old. So as soon as you hit 65 years old, you become a normal citizen, which means you also can't be, for instance, the prime minister can't be elected more than twice. So the current prime minister will tell you very simply, I've been prime minister once. He was in the opposition party. He's been elected. Then at the next election, there was someone else, another party. And then he elected again. And he said, when I finish my 5 years, I'm done. Right? But also if you hit 65 at that moment, that also happens. So they have their own way of embedding a number of these. Now, to come back to the festival, there are a number of things actually happening in Bhutan in the month of November, in that week surrounding the 11th of November. And there's also a GNH forum, which is a Gross National Happiness Forum, which is also the first time, a landmark first time event. And that's also for honoring his contribution to the GNH. So this Bhutan, Thimphu is going to be very busy in that center week. How to be part of it? Basically 2 ways. No, 3 ways, actually, to be really. The first is to come to Bhutan. However, time is a bit shrinking. So it starts the 4th of November and ends on the 19th of November. But the central events are actually from the 4th to the 15th, which is 10 days. If there's a registration, I can give you the website, and there's a registration. You can register there, and then, but you need to, I can also give you the name of a travel agent, and then you can organize your travel. But from the US, it becomes quite a substantive amount of budget to travel from the US. And then you have to pay the SDF of $100 a day, plus a visa of $50 for 7 days or 10 days. So that's one way of doing it. And I can give you details on how to do this. This is really a way to experience Bhutan in a completely unique way. It's going to be very busy, but it's going to be full devotion. There's going to be a lot of energy. It's also a country where the energy is quite strong. It's quite less oxygen, but it's very strong. So the powers of all these monasteries and prayer flags are really playing parts in it. So it's a unique place. Air is pure, and also November is the highest touristic season because of the weather. It's blue sky and crisp air. So that's one way of doing. The second way of being part of it is to connect live stream. So this is going to be broadcast on the official broadcasting channel of Bhutan, which is the BBS. So we can have it on YouTube. And now the time difference is going to play a big role, but to have it, so we are talking about 12 hours, if I'm correct. I mean, the US has about 2-3 hours different, but we are about there. We're about 12 hours different. So you can connect via a live stream on the BBS channel on YouTube. The third way of connecting is probably a little more inner work, or what we call also in Vajrayana secret work, which is your own, you know, your own inner mind. And that is to connect with the application. So part of the whole project, and I know the Prime Minister was very keen. I want an application. He kept repeating that to me. I want an application. So there's application being developed, and it's going to be launched on the 4th of November. And that's an application to log in your mantra chanting. If you understand a bit of the butterfly effect, or if you know a bit about the power of meditation, but also the power of meditation and mantra chanting, it can be quite powerful to feel that you're connecting with something that is outside yourself, bigger than yourself. So yes, you can log in your mantra by your sitting cushion, but you can log that in on the application, which is I can give you the link as well for that. That is called Guru app, and that's one of them. But there's actually, now I realize, there's a fourth way of doing it. First, initially I said 3, but actually 4. Fourth would be to create a small watch party or something, a watch hub. So to have a few, like a sangha or your own community or meditation community, and have a screen and actually be part of it. And you can actually let us know that this is happening. We would be happy to know that some communities are doing group live streaming and practicing. I think this is it was, I have to say, initially part of the idea, which I put in the document. So then there are technicalities to actually do it. But yeah, that's one way of doing that. And attending and being part of the Kalachakra empowerment, even on screen, once we understand what is a Kalachakra empowerment, what is a Kalachakra, and that this is happening for the first time in Bhutan, some work can happen at the inner level, as well as by not being physically there. The Dalai Lama would say, His Holiness the Dalai Lama would say, in Vajrayana there are lots of empowerments and lots of things happening. That doesn't mean that the person sitting there actually understands what's happening. But if your inner mind know already what a Kalachakra is, if you're sitting there, and even if you're live stream and you're not in person, you get the energy. You get be part of this mandala as well, because the mandala connects at the different level, not necessarily at the physical level. It connects like it connects us. We are talking here about high tantra, and we are talking here about meditation and the power of the energies. You enter Amaravati main hall after a rains retreat or after a full day of a night-long meditation, you'll feel the energy of the place. A little bit sensitive to that. So there's the same happening with the mantra. So we also, you and I, right now on this screen, we are connecting at a different level than the physical level, 12 hours difference between us. But we are talking about something that stands beyond the dual world. So I think that this is quite important to mention, that attending the Kalachakra empowerment is very it's very nice, but one has to understand a bit what's happening and what the Kalachakra is about. It's not like just going to be self-enlightenment just like that on the spot. Doesn't. If it happened like that, we would be living in a completely different world, I think. So the Global Peace Prayer Festival is going to be a large gathering of Rinpoche and a large gathering of monastic. It would be, when I say Rinpoche, it usually goes to male monastics. The large part of the monastic who are going to be present for the chanting are male. This is a reality that cannot be hidden. I mean, it's out there. It's mainly male. Now the idea is to catch up and to bring this up to speed with the presence of nuns, the presence of other lama, and the respect of the Vajrayana tradition, which includes a number of women. So step by step, we will get there. I'm sure one day we will get there. So yeah, I hope I answered your question. I know it, as you mentioned, it touches the surface of a number of things.
You did.
The purpose is not to go in depth. If you want to go in depth, we can go in depth on a number of other aspects. But essentially, the main theme is that peace is necessary in this world at this moment. Not everyone sees peace in the same way. For some people, being at peace means being contented. I'm at peace. That's my own little thing. Now, if you go into the macrocosm, there's a lot of fear mongering out there. But if you think about it, it has always happened. The Kalachakra says it's time to awaken. It's time to start thinking beyond my own little environment and my own little, my own little greed and my own little things that I like and dislikes, and my own little delusions that everyone is a good person. Yes, but not everyone behaves in a good way. I think it is also said somewhere in the sutras that it's going to get a lot worse than it is already. So if we can be a part of a positive imprint, it's not just good for your own inner peace, it's also good for a bit of a butterfly effect and influencing what's out there. And plus it's happening in Bhutan, which is, I have to say, globally now, to just close it on the details of Bhutan and encapsulate it as it's really a very sacred country. It's you entering a different dimension. I call it a bit the Vajrayana Harry Potter. You pass beyond something and you enter a world where everything functions at a completely different pace. To the dot. I can give you a lot of details. It functions completely differently. And it's not just visually beautiful, as you said. Tourism leaflets or tourism video have a lot of that stereotype, but that's how it is. That's how Bhutan is. There are no traffic lights. It's a country, there are no traffic lights. That doesn't mean that there is no traffic. Yeah.
I'm
I
thinking it's like a Buddhist Iceland, you know what I mean? Like the magical, mystical. Why? I mean, just I've been to Iceland though, but I hopefully it's not an oversimplification to say it is like the only Buddhist country. You know, I mean, it's a little more specific and involved in that. And yeah, I've heard some of your, I've seen some of your pictures and heard some of your reports on it, and it just sounds very wonderful and amazing. And be great. I won't be able to get to go this time. I've got other commitments, but I really appreciate this, the other options to join too. And if people say, well, no, I don't want to be involved in the world so much. But even if that's the case, then you can still kind of give your own blessing to other people that are engaging in the world in skillful ways, And when we have to interact with the external world, I can't think of really much of a more high-minded, broad and expansive, heartfelt way to be engaged and supportive of ourselves and others, and and like you said, the butterfly effect in the long term too. The historical Buddha, always
Yep.
was talking about it in the long term, and so it's and he also said that a drop by drop, a water bucket's filled. So don't think, good won't come to me, or don't think bad won't come to me, because every little bit matters. And so even just spending a few moments skimming through this podcast or whatever, or, checking out or just thinking about it for a few moments, I think would be better than nothing at all. And then it just goes up from there, So I think we ought to starting to wrap up. And I think everything Asoka mentioned here, I should probably be able to include in the show notes. I don't know about the travel agent stuff. We'll work that out after the show, what all should be put in on the show notes and stuff. But I'm sure I can do an embed of the YouTube stream on the blog post too. So Asoka, wrap.
If
If you want to address the rest,
yeah.
please.
I wanted to add one thing, just that stays on like a bit of a cherry on top of the cake, and is that it seems to me, coming from also Zen tradition, and then, yes, blending it with Thai forest tradition, and then eventually also as a woman, I find myself more at ease with stepping back into Vajrayana practice. It seems also to me, in that sense as well, Bhutan is trying to comparative advantage to work on that. Its comparative advantage, trying to not to do mistakes other places have made. So they stepping is a bit like passing from 2G to 6G, and they have a chance of letting go of all the trouble of upgrading to 3G and 4G and then 5G, in a way of saying it's a bit of that's their leverage. They can do it this way. It's a country that is highly respectful of tradition, and also this event sets itself into how to bridge ancient tradition with all its wealth of and body of practices, but also of, there's a lot in Tantra, there's a lot of secret teachings and lots of secret places, self-arising Buddha here and self-arising Ganesh there. You have people mentioning, I have to take you there. There's a mountain over there. There's a self-arising. And you just go into this place and just to see a self-arising. So it's a really sacred in that sense. It sets itself a bit apart from other places. So it has this, it has a big talent in between brackets to sell itself as a brand. Bhutan is a brand of high quality, but it comes really with a very sacred energy in it. It's not just a marketing hype, if I may say. It's not just something we want to sell Bhutan as being a high quality. It really, the open heart of the people working with them, even like I've done in the past 4 months, is really like there is a completely different understanding and pillars foundational for relations between people. It's very sacred, so it's very special, and that's one. For the event, yes, the butterfly effect. I still try to see if you want to organize people to come, if people are interested to come, jump in and do it, because Bhutan offers a completely different perspective. It's really a very sacred and very special place. Otherwise, I think I said it all. I hope I
Yeah, I
paid
can't.
respect to I hope that there's not too much of scholarly details. I tried not to be too scholarly. I tried to make it really, but not knowing who I'm talking to, in the sense I'm not sure about your audience.
Well, that's right, and
I think
we really don't know who's going to find this on the internet, and hopefully I didn't offend anyone. If I did, please forgive me for being a little bit, flippant or glib there, and I was just being a little playful. And I
no,
could imagine the depth of practice for centuries in Bhutan, having kind of this concentration and closed off, and then now opening it up relatively recently
yeah.
and sharing these gifts and this amazing energy and all the goodness that comes from these practices that have been kind of hidden, in that area for so long. So it seems quite
So
amazing to me. Yeah.
there's a trend. You if I may just have this moment with you, because I know we understand each other. We've been chatting. We know each other almost, I don't know, 3 years or something. We've been talking a lot about a number of topics, but you may have realized as well that at this moment we're talking, there's a shift of artificial intelligence becoming, it was there before, but becoming a common tool for a practice. It's in everyday life more than it was before. Now, our generation has one way of using it. Like, I double check, for instance, when I go on ChatGPT, I ask, are you really sure about this? And sometimes I was like, I'm not sure, actually. I made a mistake. You're right. You picked it up. But I was recently in Bhutan at a mindfulness conference, Vajrayana Mindfulness and Neuroscience and Artificial Intelligence, and it was there were a number of presentations. You can hear that there is a trend amongst younger generation to rely exclusively on this, right? So what does Buddhism suggest? Encourages you to always double check. Are these youngsters double checking, or is the reality of Instagram as it has been? Even for us, we put things on Instagram, but because we know we put it there, because we like to put it there. But there are people who actually do the opposite. Whatever is on Instagram is actually the truth, or on TikTok, which I don't even have TikTok. So that generation has a completely different mindset on how they use artificial intelligence. My purpose with this, this podcast, as well as the way I have been putting myself, heart and soul, I would say, into this project of the Global Peace Prayer, has been I'm contributing by being involved in it. I'm contributing to try to keep pure Dharma alive. What is pure Dharma? Is Dharma without all the fluffy little things. I've heard some podcast where they, AI generated podcasts. AI generated videos as well, where Buddha is presented as a rock star, and Maitreya is the next rock star in the stardom, in the Buddhist stardom. And I'm like, okay, this is just terminology. But if we start just by changing the terminology already, where are we going? So all the
This
nuns and the dakinis are going to become, So the idea is this event for youth, with youth in mind, is trying to set itself at this very moment as bringing ancient times in a language of modernity. So it's a very subtle line, because ancient times devotional practice might be considered something very outdated for old people. It doesn't change much. There's another way to work at peace. But to maintain that and to present it and offer it in a more contemporary way, that's one way of doing it. And that's Bhutan is trying to offer that this way. There are maybe flaws there are failures, there are this. It's a first time event. It can always be better, and it's always easier to criticize it. Oh, there isn't this and that. But when you are part of it, you realize you have to work with the context. So bridging ancient times with modern times is, I think, the trademark of this event.
This is so vitally important here, and I just hopefully I don't come off like an old fogey here, which nobody even uses that language anyway. But Asoka makes such a great point. Our generation, we're kind of I can't speak for, but I was the last generation to know a world before internet. That they can't, that they don't know. So they don't have that reference point like we do, right? I'm not as super immersed either.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
I find myself using AI more and more, and what I see it becoming where people eventually, it might even happen faster than we think, where people are being conditioned to not even make decisions for themselves anymore, to go to AI to make all the decisions in their lives. And then the internet is being flooded with like AI slop right now. Some people might say deliberately, even so, that they might want to usher in a digital ID to have, and this is a whole nother ball of wax I'll just touch on real briefly, but I think we can do this without needing to do that, because eventually they say it might get so flooded with AI, people won't be able to discern what is legitimate and what's AI generated. And so they need to lock down the internet, and you have to get a registered ID, and you have to be, every movement tracked and traced online and approved through social credit systems and all this. So I don't think we have to go there. And one of the bridges, I think, where we don't have to go there, where younger generations can kind of get a reference point and maybe more discernment, is if they do go offline and immerse themselves in like some more ancient tradition like this. This is an opportunity for them to know what it's like without and I'm not saying they're not Luddites there either, but it's something that's I don't think there's much reference for something like this in the West, at least in America, because America is kind of an experiment yet. And some hipsters are into throwing away all the tech and going lo-fi, and some people will never consider anything like this. But I think it is really an alternative to what's going on now. And if people don't have this reference point, this is one way to get it, I feel.
There is another way to connect. I mean, the U.S. is there are a lot. The Bhutanese communities in the U.S. are quite substantive. So there's a big community around New York. I mean, east side. I'm not sure about where you are, but I know so that there is one in California. So it would be also possible to tap into those communities to check, because they are certainly tuned in, because that was part of the project as well, to tune into the communities abroad. And the other way would be to, if people are interested, just to go to I don't know where you are exactly in the US, but when I was in California,
No, I'm in the middle of a rural
yeah.
area. I mean, like country bumpkin as it can get, where I'm at now, the flyover states in the middle of nowhere, basically. Yeah.
Right, because what I have experienced in some parts of the US is that there's a monastery or there's a sangha every, I'm not saying maybe 50
Most of the major
kilometers
cities
or
have them.
50 miles.
Yeah, most of the
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
There's some in Colorado, and I'm done. But anyway, there are many ways to connect with this, and just the fact of listening to this would be also a way of to connect that, to understand a bit more how Bhutan works, and they're really trying to make it completely different. Like the government is paperless government. They all have computers. It's paperless.
I did not know that. Wow.
They really try. Mm-hmm. So
well, yeah, there seems a lot of modern innovations.
Yeah, and they are trying really hard to as I said, to build that ancient tradition with modern times, and to keep attracting the youth as well into that movement, and say, hey, you're Bhutanese. There's a lot here going on that we cannot let that go in a way. It's very rich and it's recognized and respected by many, not just Himalayan people, but as well as South Asia and the West. So bridge that, help us bridge that. And that's where also the application comes in for logging in the prayers. That's one step. Then there might be, we also have small reels that have been produced asking people about what peace means. So these are little steps, here and there, but essentially it's really about bridging. And I think it's an important bridge to create. Not to deny we have a new, between brackets, era coming in, because it would be very difficult to live without AI at this point. For instance, even where I am at the moment, I cannot log into my bank account on the website. There are certain things I cannot do on my website, on the bank website. I have to use the app. So I have to have a phone to do certain things. I tried to convert it on the website just because it's more soothing for the eyes. It doesn't. They told me, no, you have to do that on the app only. So that's one thing. So you cannot refuse that aspect. And on the other end, you can also not just deny this is a big, rich tradition and say, okay, we leave that for there and we step into. It's all about blending, and it's all about where is the bridging point? The youth, your generations, children. What is now called Gen Z, or, even further, even not just Gen Z, the one before Gen Z. So those who are now in their 40s and 30s, 40s, all that generation.
Millennials, maybe.
These
yeah,
are
millennials.
Millennials are already, yeah. But you know what I mean? All that group that is 15, 20 years before us, those that they need to keep that and understand that consciousness is not your brain. your brain is your physical brain, but the mind is not in your brain. It's not in here. The mind is here, but it's not here. To understand that, because otherwise we are going somewhere. And I think this festival helps a bit. It's a small step into that. So we can have another podcast after I've been there.
Well, that's beautiful. Yeah. Well, that's a possibility. So very cool. Well, Soka, thanks for doing this. Thanks for reaching out and asking me to do this. I really appreciate it. So may all beings everywhere.
And
oh, yeah.
Be free from suffering and the causes of suffering.
Absolutely. Bye now.
Thank you. Bye.
Welcome.